Okay, brothers and sisters, once again, I can't sleep. It's 2:57, Saturday morning, June 1st, and Spirit just sent me to get information out the best way we can, and this documentation and narration is what this is going to be, basically. It is the Black Wall Street 2.0, and it is by J.J. Wilson and Annette Wilson, the Urban Blueprint. And it's going to, basically what I'm going to do is, as often as I can, I'm going to read off a narration as the story is told by the brother and sister here who did this book and went and got the documentation as it was told, as it happened in the Black City of Gold. And this is the legend and our story of the Black Wall Street. If you have Black City of Gold, the legend of the Black Wall Street, if you purchase this book, you should be aware that it might have been stolen property and reported as unsold or destroyed by the publisher. In such case, neither the author nor the publisher has received payment for this stripped book. The name Black Wall Street is protected worldwide trademark and owned by J.J. Wilson and Ron Wallace, referencing the trademark law, the first right of creation. This word or phrase is trademarked in this format, Black Wall Street, and was first trademarked in 1990. This is abbreviation. It is BW 2.0 Publishing. It's solely owned by author, researcher J.J. Wilson and Annette Wilson. The term Black City of Gold, the legend of Black Wall Street, is a worldwide trademark referencing the trademark law, first right of creation, and was first created in 2002. Now, it says, going to get into all of it because this is, again, this is copyrighted work that I'm reading, and it's information of our history. And for this book to be published, I see there's no problem with this coming forward. The cover art is by J.J. Wilson. Black City of Gold, The Legend of the Black Wall Street is written by authors J.J. Wilson and Annette Wilson, based on the original motion picture screenplay Black City of Gold, The Legend of Black Wall Street, written by J.J. Wilson and Annette Wilson, Writers Guild of America, West, copyright November 2004. The Writers Guild, the Writers Guild registration number is 1028202. Initial printing was May 2006. Printed and distributed exclusively by the BW 2.0, the Black Wall Street Publishers, LLC, Dallas, Texas. 1-972-775-0788 headquarters. Email address is theblackwallstreetmovie@yahoo.com. To book a speaking engagement or contact the Black Wall Street, the BW 2.0 publicity number is area code so that's the number, Dallas, Texas, that I read off earlier as far as the headquarters, and the number is again 1-972-775-0788. The email address is dallasgoldmedia@yahoo.com. Now, the Black Wall Street, as it is, they have a movie out, and I guess, maybe this may be interesting to the people to formulate it and hear the book as it being read. So I am just a narrator. Okay. The Urban Blueprint, Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1921. Black Wall Street was the most prolific black business district model in American history. It was our first business district prototype. The powers in Oklahoma and around the country understood this type of mindset and had to destroy it. Blacks in Tulsa had a unique entrepreneurial spirit. That said, don't look for a job, create one. Small independent black townships soon began popping up all over the country. The prototype was emulating itself. You see, again, we had a model, we had a spirit that said, don't look for a job, create one. And that's what we were doing at that time, people. Okay, so again, profound change should take place in the generation if urban communities would begin modeling after the urban blueprint set in place for us in Black Wall Street in 1921. It's very simple. Erase the Willie Lynch syndrome and emulate the Black Wall Street prototype. Change would be inevitable. Now, this is the preface. During the early 1900s in North Tulsa, Oklahoma, a unique and rare group of African Americans built the most prolific black business district model prototype in American history called Black Wall Street. There was over 600 thriving black businesses within a 36-square block section of this small town in the middle of nowhere. The town was originally named Greenwood. However, it was soon referred to as Little Africa and Nigger Town by racist hate groups such as the Knights of Liberty, Klan, and the White Camellia. After it prospered and flourished beyond the imagination, it was nicknamed America's Black Wall Street by powers within the New York financial district. An abundance of highly educated black doctors, lawyers, educators, business owners, oilmen, and entrepreneurs actually controlled their own destinies in society that prevented them from venturing into other parts of the city or the state. Strict Jim Crow laws were established which made it illegal for blacks to travel freely in other parts of the city except to work for a white family or business. These Jim Crow laws were set up and strictly enforced. Something fascinating began to happen, however. The black dollar began circulating throughout the black community. The dynamic is a key reason for some of the issues that plague our black communities in today's time. Several black millionaires and dozens of black business owners actually made Black Wall Street tick. They had a private bus line, restaurant, grocery stores, beauty salons, real estate companies, nightclubs, hotels, a bank, schools, churches, and hundreds of successful business establishments, and a 700-seat theater. Even more astonishing, there were over 6 black millionaires who owned private airplanes in Black Wall Street in 1921. That's a fact, black people. And we sit around here like we don't know anything. You hear these things, but again, this is for those who haven't heard these facts. Alright, so during those times, the KKK and other racial hate groups practically owned and controlled the entire state of Oklahoma, the so-called Bible Belt of America, God's country, they so called it. Nothing could be further from the truth. These hate groups set out systematically to destroy a major black economic movement, which was starting to emulate itself all over America. What if that incredible black business model had not been stopped? Without that solid foundation, how has that affected today's black communities? And that is J.J. Wilson, author and researcher. Now, this is from the author, J.J. Wilson. After 7 decades, why were there still powers in Oklahoma who wanted the Black Wall Street legacy to be smothered for our babies, our youth, and them? Smother means to suffocate, to snuff it out. To, you know, if you have fire and you want to put it out, you can smother it by suffocating the oxygen and air out of it. So, in other words, they wanted to take the air out of this important part of our story, our story, and not his story. You know, just as they don't want to give back the El Haj Malik Shabazz letters and stuff, you know, property that's not theirs, and shows proof again. But again, here we go again. So this is taken from 1991, the Black Wall Street Research Project. In 1990, in 1990, my business partner and I went undercover in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to investigate and research what we then thought was the 1921 Tulsa race riots. We soon uncovered some very disturbing facts. This had been a race war. We then very clearly and carefully examined the difference between a race riot and a race war. In a race riot, the most common perception is that people loot, burn down the communities, and defy all laws. We've seen that type of behavior many times in this country during the urban uprisings. However, a race war is something altogether different. I must interject here that the concept of a race war was not something that the powers in Oklahoma or Washington, D.C. wanted to be publicized at that time, or at any other time for that matter. In a race war, people of different races go to war. This is exactly what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma on May 31st, 1921. To be very clear, this was not simply a thug element that engaged in warfare. Highly educated, successful, and very wealthy black men and women finally took a stand and went to war to save their community and business district. They built the most powerful black business district model in the history of America, one that has never been duplicated, even in today's time. Our black communities all over America today are poverty-stricken and void of any type of cohesiveness. Our youth are at war with one another on our streets. Our communities are filled with drug dealers, gangs, and our youth are killing each other over drug territories, colors, shoes, even reasons as simple as if one group lives on the East Coast or the West Coast, the Willie Lynch syndrome. Our research proved that there had definitely been a conspiracy and a cover-up to keep this untold piece of American history smothered. The powers behind this conspiracy reach all the way to Washington, D.C. From the moment we released our first book in April 1992, we received threats, constant harassment. Our phones were tapped. We were followed. Books were stolen, and our lives changed forever in our quest to expose Oklahoma's ugly little secret. 5 of us, black men, stepped up, put our lives on the line and the lives of our loved ones to assure that this powerful legacy would not be smothered. 3 have died mysteriously before the age of 50. Now, I must stop the narration there because you must see the devilment of them and how far they're willing to go. Now, mind you, you see, black men have died. Our leaders have died. Johnny Cochran and Khalid Muhammad. Most importantly, they died. Both of them brain aneurysm. Supposedly, when the stories first come out, perfectly healthy men. And we know that. So we got to ever indefinitely keep looking and striving to bring justice to hand. The most remarkable thing about my 15-year journey with the Black Wall Street legacy is how we've managed to turn a very tragic and horrific historical event into a positive motivational vehicle for change. Early on, we created the Black Wall Street Town Hall Meetings Hall and took it all over the United States. On April 23rd of each year, it's Black Wall Street, J.J. Wilson and Ron Wallace Day in the city of Atlanta, Georgia. Make a mental note of that, people. We should travel and go there on that day, April 23rd. Every year, we should make it a point to travel to Atlanta, Georgia to celebrate that historical feat of ours. That we had businesses and we had black millionaires who really did and was great and was going to deal with our community and things like that and keep things flourishing between us. So again, former Mayor Maynard Jackson and the Atlanta City Council premiered our first book and issued those citations to us. We've also received keys to the city, proclamations and awards in most urban communities in America for our work with gangs, schools, churches, major black organizations, black radio, black newspapers, colleges, and black businesses. I've committed the rest of my career to assure that the legacy of Black Wall Street lives on in the hearts and souls of all nationalities. J.J. Wilson, author, researcher, and filmmaker. So evidently, brothers and sisters, there is a film, and most of y'all probably right now, rushing right now, looking at information up to get the film and watch the film. I do know I have it somewhere here between the 400 something DVDs. You know, I'd have to look through them and find that. But again, I felt it would be some type of joy to hear a narration type, so to speak. So I want to try to make that come to life. And we should sit around on family nights with our families on nights and do this and have these type of readings, that get children involved and I believe interested. When the narration of the story starts, I suggest a lot of you, some of you, just sit back and relax and close your eyes and listen to the reenactment of this narration. Okay. Because with that in mind, there's nothing better than closing your eyes and hearing it, and then you can formulate it as you're hearing the narration in your mind. So you're creating your own television. You're creating your own movie screen in your own head. Brief words from key figures in American history. The former Atlanta Mayor, Maynard Jackson. You are to be commended for bringing this virtually lost and untold story to the attention of the public. It is through writing such as this that our African-American youth in Atlanta and nationwide will develop a new sense of pride in their heritage. The Atlanta, Georgia City Council, Proclamation Black Wall Street Day, J.J. Wilson and Ron Wallace Day, April 23rd of every year in the city of Atlanta, Georgia. Former New York Governor Mario Cuomo. We applaud your efforts to plant positive seeds in the minds of your children and Americans, specifically African Americans who are unaware of this history of Black Wall Street. the history of that prosperous community nearly a century ago, which supported each other mostly and economically, is one that should be a source of much pride and inspiration for today's audiences. Bringing this history to light is also a reminder to all of us who love freedom and human dignity to remain vigilant against bigotry and recognize that all forms of prejudice can destroy the fabric of our society. And yet, racism and prejudice still exist today. So I guess, white people, y'all haven't gotten it. Because until y'all put aside your prejudices, because you're the ones who foremost hold the power, put that to the side, and then we can, and let us achieve, then y'all can achieve, instead of being greedy with this shit. Excuse me. I just had to throw that in. The author's research and investigation exposed Oklahoma's ugly to secret mainstream media from all over the world covered this story about the 1921 race war. And if that's so, how come I never heard about this in high school, you know? And I'm sure a lot of you haven't, and a lot of us still haven't, because they're not teaching this. Not an in-depth style. So let's talk about the mainstream medium coverage. Authors J.J. Wilson and Ron Wallace exposed one of the most horrendous cover-ups in American history. The media coverage, which was Nightline, 60 Minutes, the History Channel, BET, Lord, A&E, CNN, Jane Fonda, the New York Times, the USA Today, HBO, NPR, Showtime, the National Black Leadership Council, the Black Caucus, the Black Press, Black Radio, the NAACP's Crisis Magazine, Essence Magazine, the AV Magazine, The Final Call, Tom Joyner, Talis Smiley, Black businesses and organizations across America. So those are all the places, you know, that boom, jumped on it all of a sudden when they uncovered this. Now we're dealing with the table of contents, and we have the preface, and from the author, brief words from key American figures in the mainstream medium coverage, and the main characters. And chapter 1 is the hunt. So the acknowledgments. From the moment I learned of this amazing piece of lost African American history, it changed my life forever. I believe that God has chosen me for this very profound mission. I have and will continue to protect it with my very life. In silent moments, the ancestors of Black Wall Street guide me through difficult, dangerous, and troubling times. They show me the way. J.J. Wilson. First, I'd like to thank God for blessing and protecting me. How I was selected for this work is beyond me. This proves one thing, that we're not directing this movie, God is. To my wonderful wife, Annette, who has stood side by side with me as we fought this battle to protect and preserve the legacy of the Black Wall Street. We literally put our lives on the line. Without her, nothing that we've accomplished thus far would have been possible. To my best friends, Brother Mark and Brother Jerry, without your undying friendship, I couldn't have gone this far. We're brothers for life. And special thanks to my children, grandchildren, brothers, sisters, and relatives. And that's from J.J. Wilson, the author of the book. And that's what we need, black people, black brothers and sisters and brothers. That's what we need, is that type of support and strength when we are chosen for the missions that's set out at hand for us. You know, we got to have that type of support structure. Excuse me 1 second, if y'all don't will. Need some tea. Okay. To my lifetime friend, Bill Terry, without the push you gave us in the beginning, I don't think this legacy would still be alive. What you did will affect generations to come. Special thanks to Brother Donald Brown, who gave us a kickstart. Thanks to very special friends, Stephen and Richard Sims, who stepped up and helped a total stranger with financing to move this legacy forward. Brother Charles in Boston, thank you, brother, for your support. To Pastor Thomas, thank you for your prayers and blessings. And thanks to my new friend and spiritual guide, Prophet Marcel Collins, and his wife Ida Collins. and to my friend Missy Blue who introduced us. Thanks so much to everyone out there who helped us along this amazing journey. Thank you, Ed Goodwin, who still protects this legacy and has a wealth of knowledge about the Black Wall Street. All right, a salute to modern-day Black Wall Street business models. Special thanks to modern-day Black Wall Street business models. Thank you to my new business partner, Tony Faye. I have felt so alone marching with this marvelous banner called Black Wall Street. We as a people are so disconnected. We have no single point of communication or information source, especially one that is untainted. I had no idea that just a few hundred miles away there was another brother carrying the Black Wall Street banner. God somehow crossed our paths, and we've been friends ever since. We both have dedicated our lives to bringing about change for urban communities everywhere. Thanks to his family, Lauren, Adrian, Isaiah, Imani, Fane, Avelia, Fane, and Robert Copeland. Nicole Borders, thank you for supporting the legacy and having my back. Asina Kit Tundu, thank you for believing. And special thanks to modern-day Black Wall Street business models. Thanks to my publishing partners, Kevin Nelson and Raymond King of Worldwide Credit and Financial Solutions, IMC Holdings Group, IMC, and their families, Tatiana Nicole, Joy, Jason, Janet, Blake, Nikki, Tyra Hall Nelson, Erica Preston, and Tanya Bowers. Now we're getting into the main characters in this story. All right, so here it is, so you can catch a familiar. The main character is Son Wallace. He's half black, half Creek Indian businessman and millionaire. He was the driving force behind the Black Wall Street. He had it all: power, wealth, beautiful women, and land. He was a highly respected oil and real estate negotiator for uneducated blacks and Native Americans throughout the Midwest and the South. Now, you heard earlier, if you listened to my lecture earlier, brothers and sisters, you heard me talk about us being the Native Americans. There's Benny Wilson, the relentless black militant roughneck and moonshine runner of Black Wall Street. If it had to do with money or civil rights, Benny Wilson was always right there on the front line. But who wanted to listen to a colored man always running around preaching about freedom and uplifting of his race, who at the same time was selling moonshine, whiskey, and maybe even dope to his own people? Louis Cherry. So what's important about Benny Wilson is the fact that Benny Wilson, again, like they said, even if he sold moonshine and all that to his people. He was the militant one, and he's the one that eventually, they're going to eventually have to turn to. So with that in mind, I'm saying about when we look down upon some of these drug dealers out here, or whatever they do to survive, they got a lot more militant mindset than a lot of the so-called conscious people out here, and they will pick up arms and do what needs to do so they get the proper guidance. And when it comes for their people, you'll see. Louis Cherry, Son Wallace's loyal friend and business partner. He was constantly warning his partner that they should put together a secret black militia to protect what they had built in Black Wall Street. With the Klan killing and instilling fear into blacks in Tulsa and throughout Oklahoma, he knew that all they had worked for could go up in smoke at any time. There's Big Mabel, the proud owner and operator of Big Mabel's Juke Joint, the most popular night spot in Black Wall Street. Fine food, fine music, and fine women. Any man, black or white, could usually find anything they needed at Big Mabel's Juke Joint. That's history for you, black people. There's Neil Kirby Jr., the bright young Jewish businessman. He parlayed two small Kirby General store operations, one in the black and one in the white community, into a highly successful grocery store chain. Fueled by money, and gold lent to him by the Black Wall Street millionaires. So you hear that about all these Jews and the wealth the Jews got? So the Jews, you know, these Goldsteins and Rubensteins, they got all their wealth again from us people. So don't let be fooled by these Jews and how they fucking manipulated, capitalized off of us. Alright? Johnny Redbud, half black, half Indian, from New York. Johnny was a rare breed indeed. He refused to accept being treated like anything other than a man. Johnny Redbud also refused to accept the fact that he was forbidden to mess around with white girls. That proved to be his downfall and one of the key factors in the worst race war in the United States. You see that? That's what sparked this shit off. You heard what it just said again. Sheriff Parker, his bravery went unrecognized. He sat on the Tulsa County Courthouse steps and refused to turn young Johnny Redbud over to nearly 2,000 angry whites and hundreds of angry blacks. Ultimately, that situation exploded into an all-out war of the races, the 1921 Tulsa Race War and violence. Smiley Jefferson, the 86-year-old wino of Black Wall Street, who was always stumbling up and down Greenwood Avenue, warning his people about the white man in Oklahoma. Old Smiley somehow knew they'd come sooner or later. And just as he predicted, they came in forces from the air and on foot, ultimately destroying the most prolific black businesses district, the black business district prototype in American history. Bertha Strong, she's a dazzling Black Wall Street beauty who stole the heart of Son Wallace, one of the most powerful men in Oklahoma. She was not only beautiful, but she was a brilliant businesswoman who inspired women all over the Midwest and South to take a stand against racism. Sam Wells, he was the cruel, vicious leader of the Knights of Liberty Klan. Under his direction, the Klan would hold random theater lynchings of black males. They were responsible for some of the most atrocious crimes against black, Indian, and Jewish people since slavery, and their ultimate crime, the bombing and elimination of the Black Wall Street. Carl Clemens, the conniving, practical son of the town's most respected preacher, Reverend Clemens. He strategically placed himself right in the center of the most powerful black businessmen in town, Son Wallace and Louis Cherry. They later discovered he was a Judas and was revealing sensitive information to powerful white men on the other side of town. Kenny James, the most powerful moonshine boss in the Midwest and the proud owner of the infamous 700-seat Dreamland Theater. His moonshine operations stretched from Louisiana to Kansas City. His ingenious underground hideaway baffled his competitors and was always one step ahead of the law. Delivering the legacy to the masses from authors J.J. Wilson and Annette Wilson. A powerful legacy such as this must be disseminated to the masses in a very strategic and carefully thought out manner. How do you deliver a message of this magnitude to the masses? Do you write a history book and just hope that an African American community reads it, learns from it, and hopefully goes back and makes changes in their communities? On the other hand, do you write a book that ignites racial conflict all over the country? No. We gather all of our historical documentation, interviews, and research, protected the names of the innocent, and delivered this powerful legacy to African Americans in a story format, coded with critical messages that bring about change. So if one reads the story, you will get the history. I hope that the reader will gain a better respect for the true African American experience in this story. One will find pride, hope, joy, love, happiness, anger, sadness, astonishment, unity, and wonderful new feeling and spirit of entrepreneurship. Ironically, during our research, we found that many successful African Americans of today have roots tied to the Black Wall Street Native Americans, the Trail of Tears of the Midwest. J.J. Wilson, author and researcher and filmmaker. And that was my reason to decide to do this little YouTube project, you know, to read it along so that we can get a better feel and a better spirit of it, brothers and sisters. And, you know, and I think y'all will get that feeling once y'all start hearing this, once y'all start checking out the views on this. Here we go. Chapter 1, The Hunt. Emma Louise Walker sat nervously in the front seat of a broken-down old wagon, nursing her 3-month-old daughter, Alice Elizabeth. It was in the quiet early morning hours of summer, 1860, far into the treacherous back hills of South Oklahoma, Indian Territory. Her tall, muscular husband, Big Joe Walker, was desperately trying to repair the broken rear wheel of their wagon, which was hitched to a tired, worn-out old mule. Their luck finally ran out, and the old wagon stalled and broke down right in the middle of a small stream layered with dangerous, jagged rocks. Moments earlier, Big Joe had made the fatal decision to cross the stream in hopes of covering their tracks and evading 2 vicious slave catchers who were hot on their trail. 2 ruthless horsemen had been relentlessly tracking them down for several days and were gaining on them by the hour. Their faithful old mule, Mo, was busily taking in huge gulps from the river's fresh water supply and occasionally nibbling up at leaves from a nearby hanging tree, once used to hang black slaves. Emma Louise was not quite 20 years old. However, her undeniable beauty clearly outshined the years of cruel and inhumane treatment she suffered at the hands of ruthless Southern slave masters. In her short lifetime, she'd been sold several times and had been passed around to several different slaveholders and their families because of her inability to be broken. Emma simply refused to adapt to the cruel systems of slavery. Something deep inside her young soul protected her from caving into captivity and the concept of Southern slavery. She was truly one of the special ones God had placed here on earth. Her mother had taught her from a very early age that the blood which ran through her veins came from a royal bloodline. Those haunted words remained etched deep in her mind over the years, allowing her to remain strong enough to survive whatever pain and suffering she'd have to endure. Her husband, Big Joe Walker, was almost 10 years her senior and was just as stubborn. He was a strong, proud black man who'd never been able to accept the inhumane treatment from the hands of Southern slave masters. Several missing fingers on both of his hands and obvious lint were a testament to his stubbornness, punishment he endured each time he tried to escape. Both had bided their time, planned and prepared for the precise moment to escape, honoring the horrible conditions on their huge plantation in their dawn. Weary and worn, they forged ahead. Days of running had taken its toll on both of them. They had escaped sure death several times over the past few days, and the thought of what would happen to them if they were caught kept them both terrified and constantly on the run. All they could think about was saving the life of their newborn daughter, Alice Elizabeth, and reaching a place to start a life with their new family. Both of them realized that if they were caught, they'd suffer a violent death at the hands of vicious, unrelenting killers who were tracking them. With the slave catchers not far behind, Big Joe knew that he must quickly repair the rear wheels of the wagon. Still stuck between the jagged rocks of the shallow riverbed, Big Joe was suppressing his nervousness, hoping not to alarm his already terrified young wife. But something inside kept warning him that they had very little time left before the ruthless slave catchers would catch up with them. Suddenly, Big Joe's survival instincts signaled that danger was near. He slowly and suspiciously rose to his feet. He reared his head in a half circle, and then quickly tore from the shallow stream toward dry ground. He nervously kneeled down and placed the side of his face on the rough gravel, listening intently. He learned this ancient technique from living on an Indian reservation when he was younger. The ground sent rumbling signals so intense that Big Joe jumped to his feet in panic. He frantically raced back through the water, falling several times and calling out warnings to Emma. Emma! Emma! Come on, get out of this wagon. Come on, hurry. Hurry, honey, hurry. Emma panicked, frantically wrapping up her newborn child. In one sweeping motion, Big Joe lifted her and his baby from the wagon and raced through the water toward an opening amongst the towering trees just up ahead. It's okay. It's okay, honey. Hurry. Come on, honey, now. It'll be okay. Big Joe screamed softly in an unsure tone. Emma was now crying uncontrollably, but she quickly gathered strength from her strong-willed husband and kept on moving. She always felt safe with Big Joe, and at the height of danger, she knew he'd protect his family first. The rumbling sounds of two big horses just around the bend echoed in their ears as Big Joe guided them to a safe place just inside the woods. Two slave catchers reached the stream where Big Joe's old wagon was stuck. Without a thought, the first slave catcher pulled out his long pistol and shot their old mule. Pow! Killing him instantly. The second slave catcher slowly and carefully guided his big horse through the jagged rocks in the stream over to the bank where he noticed fresh tracks. He smiled devilishly, calmly pulled out a wrinkled-up cigarette, lit it, took a long puff, and then motioned for his partner to follow. This way. Come on. They went this way. They're in them woods. He pointed toward a nearby clearing, still smiling, as they carefully guided the big animals through the jagged rocks toward the bank. Once they reached the bank, they slapped their horses on their backsides and sped toward the clearing where Big Joe and Emma had gone just seconds earlier. Hiya! Hiya! Giddy up there! The lead slave catcher yelled out loudly. Big Joe and Emma were now running for their lives through the woods in search of a safe place to hide. Long, sharp branches snagged and tore through their skin as they frantically fled through the woods. The men on horseback were growing nearer and nearer by the second. Tears were flowing down Emma's face. Her baby was screaming, and Big Joe was trampling through the woods as fast as he possibly could on his one bad leg, urging her forward and nervously looking back over his shoulders every few seconds for a sign of advancing killers. Suddenly, Big Joe stopped cold in his tracks, realizing that there was very little hope left for them to survive the inevitable attack that was just moments away. He made one final life-changing decision to save his wife and child. He hurried Emma to a safe hiding place behind tall bushes, desperately begging her to calm their baby down. Emma, you have to keep her quiet, honey. Keep her quiet now. Shh. Hey, come on, sweetheart. Shh. He whispered softly to his screaming infant daughter. Big Joe kneeled down and looked Emma right in her eyes for a long, terrifying moment. That instant, Emma saw a peace in her husband's eyes she'd never seen before. They both realized what had to be done in order to save the life of their baby daughter. Without another word, Big Joe kissed his wife for the very last time and fled in the opposite direction, hoping to divert their attention to him. Emma knew there was no stopping Big Joe at that point. She screamed softly, "Joe, no!" She realized that she would never see Big Joe alive again, and she broke down sobbing hysterically. She cradled her baby and whispered for her not to cry. "Shh, come on now. Quiet now, sweetie. Come on now. It's gonna all be okay. It'll be all okay," she whispered in soft desperation. Meanwhile, Big Joe raced through the woods with all the strength he had left in him, all the time mumbling out an ancient warrior's last chant, softly to himself. The two slave catchers, racing at full speed, finally caught up with him. When they were only a few yards away, the leader pulled out his pistol and shot Big Joe twice in the back. Pow! Pow! Emma heard the loud blast and screamed out hysterically, realizing that they had just murdered her husband. "Joe!" she cried out. Her terrifying screams reached the ears of the two heartless killers, who immediately swerved their horses in that direction and headed back in her direction. Her baby was screaming uncontrollably, and she no longer tried to calm little Alice down. Without Big Joe, Emma had very little fight left in her. It was as if all the life now gone forever, all she lived for, would now be nothing more than a sad memory, ripping her heart apart every time Big Joe's image appeared in her mind. 2 slave catchers reached her hiding place behind the tall bushes. They dismounted and slowly walked over to where she was cradling her daughter and weeping softly. The leader extended his hand for her to give him the child. She quickly jerked back, refusing. He gave her a long, threatening glare, leaned down, and slapped her hard across her face, then snatched her baby all in one motion. She instantly recovered from the slap and began crying and pleading for her child's life. He pulled out a long sword, raised it high above his head, with the intention of slicing the baby in half. A split second before his hands came down, 2 long Indian arrows struck both men through their hearts. With pinpoint accuracy, the man with the child let go of his tight grip, and the baby fell down into Emma's outstretched arms. Emma was stunned when she saw a small band of red and black Native American braves, all with bows and arrows still drawn back several yards away. Without fear, Emma jumped to her feet and scrambled away to see what had happened to her husband. "Joe! Joe!" she screamed, racing off to find him. The small band of braves, still on horseback, slowly followed her through a clearing up ahead. As they slowly moved through an open space in the woods, Emma found Big Joe lying face down. She fell to her knees, rolled him over, and began begging God to spare his life. "Oh, God, Joe, don't go. Please, Joe. I can't live without you, honey. Please, oh, my God, please." Big Joe was still conscious and barely hanging on. The lead brave, Chief Little John Wallace, slowly got down from his horse and walked over to Emma's side. Big Joe was almost gone at this point. He could hardly keep his eyes open as sweat dripped down both sides of his face. Emma wept softly and lovingly wiped his face. Big Joe managed to mutter his last words to the woman he thought he'd grow old with. "Don't cry, Emma, honey. God will look after you, I promise," he mumbled softly, out of breath. "I don't care, Joe. I don't care about that. I can't live without you. I don't want to live without you, Joe." "You hush now. You have to be strong and take care of our baby girl. Promise me that. Promise me you won't give up, Emma." Emma just continued weeping without answering. "Emma, you promised me that you take care of our daughter. She's going to grow up to be somebody special one day. And this is all wasn't for nothing. You and me wasn't for nothing. You hear me?" In that instant, the strong-looking young brave stood up and stared down at Big Joe, who muttered his final words. "I love you, Emma. I always have. I'll love you forever, honey. Take care of my Alice. God will watch over. God will watch after you," he promised. "He promised me." Emma screamed up to the top of her lungs, realizing that her almost gone. The young brave's eyes were filled with sympathy as he tried to comfort her. "Joe, no. Don't go now, Joe. Please, don't leave me now, Joe." Big Joe took his last breath and died with his eyes wide open, still staring at the woman he loved more than life itself. The young warrior leaned down and closed Big Joe's eyes and then whispered to her softly, "He's gone, but his spirit will live with you and your child for the rest of your days. You must pray for his spirit now." He was Chief Little John Wallace, a bold young mixed red and black warrior. He stood over 6 foot tall with strong Native American features, cold black hair, a powerful build. His father was black, and his mother was full-blooded Creek Indian. He was raised in a small Indian settlement far into the hills of South Oklahoma. He lifted Emma to her feet and motioned for her to follow him. She jerked away, not in fear, but because he wanted to give her dead husband a proper burial. Chief Little John Wallace understood and mentioned to his young braves to help dig a grave for the huge black fallen warrior. And I will leave off there, brothers and sisters. I could go on all night. I've actually only been going, I think 45 minutes. So I'm looking at the time. I will give it a full, I should give it a full hour. I think y'all can further, I feel if y'all getting wrapped up into it as I am, because I've read this book like several times, and I'm just in, every time I read it, I feel like I'm there, and I can envision this happening and reliving this, and I'm reliving this experience by hearing this story, you know. After about an hour, the braves had placed Big Joe's huge body in a shallow grave. Emma was kneeling down, still weeping softly and praying at Big Joe's gravesite. Finally, Chief Little John Wallace helped her up on the rear of his horse, and they headed off slowly through the woods. He was taking them back to his settlement, nestled far in the back hills of South Oklahoma. Suddenly, Chief Little John Wallace noticed danger in the distance and motioned for his braves to halt. Coming from around a bend were a small regiment of approximately 20 armed buffalo soldiers. The captain was a ruggedly built black man in his mid-30s who led the way. Both sides engaged in visual standoff for several long, uncomfortable moments, not knowing what to expect next. Chief Little John Wallace finally broke the long silence and spoke in perfect English dialect to everyone's amazement. "We have no war with you, black warrior. Buffalo soldiers have helped the white man slaughter our people, and yet we have never gone to war against you. We have only protected ourselves. This woman and child are in danger. She has black skin like you. Slave catchers just murdered her husband. They would have killed her and her baby if we had not come along and helped them." Emma quickly spoke up. "They saved my life and the life of my baby. He's telling you the truth. They killed my Joe. They killed my Joe." She broke down when her baby screamed out, "Please, I beg you, let us through. They saved our lives, my life and my baby's life," she pleaded. The young chief spoke. "They have placed your people into slavery, and you fight with them against us? They are your enemy, not us." The captain was taken back by the intelligence and bravery of young Chief Little John Wallace. He looked over at his amazed troops and silently agreed with the young warrior. After a few moments, he finally spoke. "You may go on through. No harm will come to you." The buffalo soldiers backed their horses up and made an opening for the bold young braves to pass through. Chief Little John Wallace nodded and fearlessly guided his horse in their direction. His braves immediately followed suit. As they passed through, the buffalo soldiers stared them down one by one as they fearlessly forged their way forward. All eyes were on Emma, who was nodding at them in appreciation as she passed through on the back of Chief Little John's huge horse. They quickly disappeared into the woods without incident. After a short trip, they reached a clearing at the top of a huge mountain overlooking a beautifully carved canyon below. The settlement sat right on the bank along a long winding river which supplied fresh water and food for their people. Fish, turtles, wild turkeys, geese, rabbits, buffalo were always in abundance. Still riding on the back of Chief Little John's horse, Emma held on tight as he guided the huge animal down the mountainside toward their small paradise. For a brief second, Emma smiled as they approached the entrance, where dozens of young children and young women rushed to greet them, surrounding their small caravan in a parade-like manner. Chief Little John led the way through the settlement toward a large teepee at the far end. Out front were three elderly chiefs who watched curiously as they approached. Chief Little John Wallace got down off his horse, walked up to the seniors. He respectfully bowed his head and spoke softly to them in his native language. The entire village surrounded Emma and Alice Elizabeth. Emma didn't know quite what to make of the situation. However, the friendly people and joyous atmosphere made her confident that she and her baby were now safe and protected. The elderly chief stared her and Alice down for a long moment. Finally, they whispered softly to one another in council. They were the old wise men of the village, and their word was law with this small Creek Indian tribe. Moments later, they looked up and nodded their approval to young Chief Little John. He then turned and looked back at Emma with a big smile, indicating to her that she had found a new home amongst his people. She was now one of them. Emma, though tired more than in much grief, managed a grateful half-smile. Tears fell from her eyes. The overwhelming feeling she was having after losing her husband, yet saving the life of her precious child, was almost too much for her to handle. One elderly chief nodded at her and gave her a warm smile. Chief Little John Wallace walked over to the horse, lifted Emma and the baby down, and welcomed her to his home. You are safe here. Welcome. Everyone began dancing joyously. The woman immediately began preparing for a welcome celebration. They took her baby and led her to a nearby teepee to properly care for her. Chief Little John watched as his future wife-to-be disappeared through the large opening of the teepee. Several years later, Emma and Chief Little John Wallace were joined together in marriage and had a joyous wedding ceremony which took place only days after the birth of their first child, son Wallace. And a historical overview. After Native Americans and blacks were forced from their homelands in southern and southeastern in the southeastern states by the American government, they traveled through the Trail of Tears into what was first called Indian Territory. This region of the country was initially set up to be a red and black state. There were over 27 red and black townships in the Midwest during this period in history. The American government set up what they called the Great Land Run, which gave anyone the right to own all the land that they could settle on. White settlers came from as far away as Europe and converged upon this region of the country, staking out claims on land wherever they saw fit. Many Native Americans and blacks were intimidated and subsequently cheated out of their land by greedy, smooth-talking real estate agents with smiling faces, or simply by violence or town burning. The American government knew all along that there was oil and gold in Oklahoma. Their plan was simple. Let the Native Americans and blacks clear the land and let the Orientals build the railroads before taking full control of this region of the country. After the land was settled, the government turned Oklahoma into a state of the Union in 1907. By this time, Oklahoma had become the oil capital of the world. This powerful dynamic made many Native Americans and blacks extremely wealthy, and they became very rich landowners. However, many of them were tricked out of their land and oil holdings. They became extremely wealthy, which greatly contributed to the success of the Black Wall Street. W.E. Du Bois was said to have nicknamed this community the Black Wall Street, as well as powerful groups in New York's Wall Street district. Blacks were then forced into small northern sections of Tulsa. Native Americans were contained on reservations. Blacks, Native Americans, Jewish people, and some poor whites worked together in Tulsa and turned the small 36-block section of town into the most phenomenal black business model in today. And that's the historical overview. So you hear the facts there, brothers and sisters. I have 4 minutes to close out this closing commentary. You hear right there at the end of this that it states right here. So we can claim the land back. This is the proof. We can go to a world court and claim it back. And when you're dealing with world court, that means other nations are involved, and they become the deciding factor whether or not we get restitution and the reparations so rightly deserved, because here's the proof. This is what they've done, and it takes other nations to get on board, and I can elaborate into that further in depth, because I am doing research now to look up reparations and filing suit against the United States of America. So yes, right here, United States, you're hearing it right here on YouTube. Hassim Bey, am searching and doing the research to bring reparations against the United States, and that's my stand.